Welcome to the May Table Topper of the Month with Riley Blake Designs and Material Girls. This month we're going to be working with Summer Garden, a 36-inch kind of square table topper, more of octagonal, for this month, featuring some beautiful, cute florals. So let's take a look first at what fabrics are what and what is used in the pattern. So cutting instructions are found on page 1 of your pattern. This is your Sassy Salmon Crayola Kaleidoscope, your Gold Painter's Watercolor Swirl, the Vivid Kisses, Sweet Mint Shabby, White Swiss Dot Tone on Tone. This is your Mustard 1/8 inch stripe, and this is your Teal B Basics Gingham. All the information for cutting is in your instructions on page 1, and I'm going to make a little bit of a change for cutting purposes. It's your choice whether you want to do this or not. I'm going to alter the way that the 9 patches are made versus in the instructions they're having you cut all these little 1.5 inch squares and then sewing them together into a 9 patch. I'm going to suggest that you sew together a strip set, and then we'll cut this strip set. So in the pattern, underneath of the gold swirl, you're not going to subcut the 1.5 inch squares. So you're going to cut a 1.5 inch strip, and you're going to leave that hole. You're going to have a 2.25 inch strip left over after you get your 2.25 inch squares, which are labeled B, cut, but then you'll trim down the extra 2.25 into 1.5 and then leave that strip hole. Okay, the same goes for the Vivid Kisses, square D. We are not going to cut all of those 1.5 inch squares. We only need to cut 20 of the 1.5 inch squares, not the 32. Leave the rest of the fabric as a strip set. With the white fabric, we are going to cut only 40 1.5 inch squares. The rest of them you will leave as a whole strip, and we'll use that in our strip set in a moment when we go to make our 9 patch. I do want to talk about this diagram for cutting our teal gingham. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your teal gingham, which you have a 20 inch piece of fabric out of. You're going to cut an 18.25 inch square is the first thing that you're going to do out of that fabric. So here's my 18.25 inch square. Once I have that cut, I'm going to cut diagonally from one corner, and then I'm going to cut diagonally again from the other corner to generate me 4 triangles. Okay, those 4 triangles are going to go and create the 4 setting triangles that we need to sew on to our blocks. And then you'll notice in the diagram she's showing you to cut 2 inch by 14 inch rectangles, and we need 4 of them, and the image shows you that they're being cut on the diagonal. So let me show you how to do that. And the reason that we're cutting these on that diagonal is to keep the plaid going in the right direction, in the same direction that it will in our side setting triangles. So the first thing that we need to do is to get this on a 45 degree. So this is the remainder of my 20 by width of fabric yardage. And I'm going to break out my ruler here with my 45 degree line. I'm going to kind of make it crooked so that you can see. I'm going to line up the 45 degree line on my ruler. Okay, it should be marked at 45 on one of the straight edges of my fabric. And then I'm going to cut. We need this length to be about at least 14 inches because that's what we want. So it's not going to hurt if you come over far enough here. So I'm going to work my way over. That'll give me about 17. I come here, this strip to here is just about 14 and a half. So I know that at any point from here out, I will get a strip that's longer than 14. So I've lined up the 45-degree line on a straight edge, and I'm going to cut here so that I have a bias edge. I'm now going to measure over 2 inches. Okay, and I'm going to cut. And you can see that that strip will be longer than the 14, which is fine because we're going to need to square off the edges anyway and trim this down to match the 14 inches that we need for our project. Okay, and we will repeat that 4 times so that we have 4 strips. I just want to measure and see if, no, that one's not going to give me 14. Just want to make sure. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope, only 12. Okay, so they'll all have to come off this edge. Once I have that strip, all my strips cut, again, we need to square up the edge. So I'm going to come over just enough that I can cut a straight corner. So I want to get rid of that diagonal. And then we're going to measure 14 inches. And I'll cut the remainder off. And I'm going to do that 4 times so that I have 4 2-inch by 14-inch rectangles that we'll use for the straight corners that you see in the opposite corners of our side setting triangles. Our blocks are these floral blocks. So let me show you what they look like. Here they are. General sew and flip method piecing. The same sort of piecing that we have been doing since the beginning of this program. We did it in the bunnies. We did it in the last month's Starburst project, where we will place a triangle in the corner, sew, and then flip up. And then you can also do like we've done before. You can use your Creative Grids sew and flip corner ruler or your corner clipper, or you can use the method shown in the pattern that places your square in the corner and you're going to sew from corner to corner and then trim 1/4 inch off. We're going to do that for page 2 here. To sew our flower block, we need 5 complete blocks, and each block uses 4 of these pieced units. Okay, so you need to make 20 basically floral petals. Okay, so here's the 20 petals that you need to make, and then once you have these made, they're going to measure a 4 1/4 inch square. We're going to put them together to create our 8-inch squares. Okay, make sure that when you are laying out your squares, you're sewing them together so that that vivid teal touches to create your center. Okay, now it also is going to make sure that your leaves end up in the right direction and all that. Follow the instructions for how to press the seams, and then you will be just fine. Okay, they're pretty much all being pressed open, so that will help eliminate the bulk that builds up right here in the center, and it will also help get you a better match when you go to sew your flower together. So we're going to make 5 of these. Okay, 5 total of that floral. Then we need to make some 9 patches, and this is where I deviate from our project here. And I made a strip set because the last thing I want is to have to have all these little 1.5 inch squares that I need to sew together and then end up with 12 9 patches when I can do it a little bit faster with the strip method. Okay, so you need 2 different strip sets. You need one strip set that is white on the outside with the gold painter swirl in the middle, and then you need another strip set that is gold on the outside with the vivid kisses in the middle. And you can tell that just by looking at the way that the unit is pieced. I sewed the 1.5 inch strips together, pressed it. So when I pressed this, I pressed the white and gold to the center, and in the gold and green, I pressed away from center. That's going to allow me to get my seams to nest together. And this should measure 3.5. Okay. Now what we need to do is subcut. Okay. So I'm going to use my Stripology ruler here. I'm going to lay my Stripology ruler here. I'm going to line up a line on the ruler with the seam that I use to sew my unit. So I have a line that's lined up right on this seam. I'm going to hang over at 0 just a little bit so that I can square up my edge. And on the Stripology ruler, everywhere there is a star is a 1.5 inch cut increment. Okay, so I'm going to cut at 1.5, and I will cut at 3, and I'm going to continue doing that until I have 12 of these units. Okay, so we want 12 of these. Now we repeat the same process with the other unit. With this unit, again, we're cutting 1.5 inch increments. Square up my edge, but we need 24 because this is the unit that is going to go above and below this unit. Okay, so I'm going to cut 2 here because then there is our 9 patch. Okay. And to me, it's just easier for me than trying to put these little tiny 1.5 inch squares together. By doing it in a strip piece method, you have less room for error, less room for wonky seam allowances, things like that, and a better chance of getting a nice match here. So once I have that strip set cut up, okay, again, you need 12 of the one in the middle, and you need 24 of the white with yellow, the ones that go above and below. We're going to put right sides together. Because my seams are pressed in opposite directions, they will nest together for me. And we're going to go sew. Okay, 1/4 inch seam. There's one, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put this one on the bottom. And I would strip piece this, so I would be doing all 12 of the first sets and then come back and do all 12 of the second part. Now once your 9 patches are pieced, the pattern shows that you are pressing the seams from the middle. So look at that. Much faster than if you were to do this with all those little tiny 1.5 inch squares. So I'm going to press my seams from center, away from center. This square should measure 3.5. Okay, and you need 12 of them. Now, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to make sashing units. Okay, And with our sashing unit, okay, this is a sashing unit right here. It's the yellow, the mustard stripe with white and this little little half square triangle that generates our leaf. There are 2 different sashing units that we need to make. Okay, so in your instructions on page 2, there is one sashing unit that has the green on both sides. Okay, and then the other sashing unit, okay, that has green on one side. Okay, so you can see here's sashing unit 1, you're only making 4. Okay, it gives you the green on both sides. And then sashing unit 2 that you're making 12 of only has the green triangle on one side. The green triangle is sewn with your traditional sew and flip unit that's there. Okay, so here's that first sashing unit. Okay, and sashing unit 2 with only 1. Follow your instructions in the pattern as to which direction you're going to press your seam allowances. In sashing, both sashing units, you're going to be pressing your seam towards the mustard stripe. Okay. Those sashing units should finish out measuring 3.5 by 8 inches. And once you have those units together, it's time to put together our table topper. It is way easier to reference the diagram in your pattern on page 4 and laying out your table topper prior to starting to sew it together. Okay, it will be easier to spot a mistake. I would not try to lay it out based upon the written instructions. I would turn it over and use your graphic image shown in the pattern. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start laying out our topper. Okay, I'm going to lay out one row at a time just because of space that we have going on here. And I have one of my triangles. Let me rotate this here. One of my triangles, I have a sashing unit. I have sashing unit. These are sashing unit 2s. They only have one of the green triangles associated with them. Laid out around, I have a gingham border. I have 2 9 patches and another piece. Okay. So one thing to make note of when you are laying this out, that you have the right sashing pieces and the green squares or the green triangles are facing towards the flower so that they land where they belong. So pay attention to that. Okay. I am going to sew the sashing 2 units to the flower. I'm going to sew 2 9 patches to a sashing 2 unit, and then I'm going to sew this unit to this flower. Okay. Then I'm going to sew this unit, my border unit, to the top of this. Okay. And I'm going to press this seam open when I am done. On page 4 of your pattern is all of the directional arrows laying out which direction seams should be pressed for your project. Okay, so let's go sew. I'm actually going to go ahead and sew the top and the bottom row of this project. It's three rows, and the top and the bottom row are going to be identical. 1/4 inch seam. Okay, there's one. Now, I already had some of mine together, so I don't have quite as many seams to put together as you do. But it's I'm going to go to the iron and I'm going to press that seam open. Okay. Now that that border is sewn on, pressed open, that unit is together, we're going to attach the side triangles. Now, you want to be very careful when attaching these triangles. These edges are now biased because of the way that it was cut. So if you are to have to rip something out or seam rip it, you do want to be extremely careful that you don't overly stretch that piece. Okay, so I'm gonna line up the one corner. Pin that, and then I'm going to go ahead and pin this unit so that it matches the direction that I need. And there's one. And then I'm going to get my other unit that I made that is identical, because remember, this row and this row are the same. I'm going to get my other two triangles. Line them up and get them sewn. The important part is to match this corner. Don't overly stress about any of the other areas matching. You just want to match the side that you're on. Okay, and then we're going to go over to the machine. We're going to sew these units on, and then we are going to press these seams open as well. Now that all four sides setting triangles are on these units, I'm going to go to the iron. We're going to press these seams open and then come back and assemble our middle row. Now that our top and bottom row units are together, we are going to start working on our middle row. Now, you may notice that some of your little triangle points here at the top are not even or point out. Don't worry about that. When you're lining up your triangle, do it on the 45 edge, the 90-degree corner here. You want those to match. These you'll be able to trim up once we are done quilting and everything is there, and you can trim everything nice and even. So don't panic over that. We're going to get out our middle row, okay, which is the last 3 blocks that we have. Here we're going to lay it out. Now, as you're laying it out, this is the row that's different. These 4 center sashing units are sashing unit 1. These are the units that have the double green triangle, okay? All the other units on the flowers are the sashing 2 with the single triangle. So get your middle row laid out. I would sew all these middle units together. I would sew these small sashing units together into small rows and then join those 3 together. Okay, so there's row 1, row 2, row 3. Join them all together. Follow the diagram in the pattern for your directions to be pressing. And then on the 2 ends of our row, we're going to be adding the 2 by 14 inch rectangles here on the end. And then we're going to go and press those seams open as well. Now that those 2 side pieces are on, I'm going to go to the ironing board. We're going to press this seam open, and when I come back, we're going to join all 3 rows together. All right. Our middle row is complete. We're now going to take one of our other rows, and we're going to line it up in the appropriate location for our middle row. So your sashing unit is going to match up to the sashing unit, and these will match up to the tops of your other unit. We're going to put everything right sides together, and we will match the important seams, and then we will sew this with our 1/4 inch seam. We will then press this seam. Not sure she says particularly, but I'm going to say we're going to press the seam open just because there's a lot of intersections there. And we've done such a pretty job at pressing all the other seams open, we might as well continue. Now that both sides are on, I'm going to go give my quilt a press and we will talk about quilting. And there is our table topper. So let's talk about, now that it's complete, we're ready for layering and quilting. So looking at the image that is on your pattern cover as well as your kit box cover, a little bit of the quilting. There is a quilting design that has been placed in the corner. It's a triangular quilt design. Your choice. You very easily could create something with like ruler work or even just simple walking foot quilting. Inside the mustard stripe, she has a wavy line. There is some echo quilting around each petal, as well as what looks like a little swirl that kind of comes up into each flower petal that's there. There may be some quilting in the center, but it doesn't look like there's really that much quilting in the white of your project as well, which would be just fine. Just so you can see, like I said, it is harder to tell, but there is a quilting design right there in that corner. Looks like it was mostly probably created with some circles or oval rulers. Here's your wavy line that's happening in your gold. There is this outline quilting and then this little swirl. Looks like there is some corner to corner curves that are happening in the dead center. And that's really it. When you go to bind this project, because it has this funny corner that's happening, we treat it just like you would a miter square corner on a quilt. So I would sew up, stop within your seam allowance from the corner, sew off the edge, fold your miter, and continue sewing across. So it's not, just because it's not a true 90-degree corner, but still treat it like it would be when you go to bind this project. And there you go. There is your May project, your May table topper. Hopefully you will get it done in time for, they have this table topper slated as the August theme. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share your creations with us on social media. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next month.